Live, and one more time, we're live. And thank you very much, and welcome to Behind the Markets today, where we are touching down a little bit at a different timing, but we're touching down today on Finance Tuesday. Vernon, how are you doing, brother? How are you doing?
We're doing very well, thank you. As handsome as usual. Hope people don't find it too much that I'm handsome, but that's the reality, people. How are you today?
Well, it's the confidence for me. I think
Mm.
there's that skit where the gentleman where I don't know what he was saying. I think it was there's a meme going around where a guy says if you go to heaven and you don't find me, you're not in heaven. That level of confidence is what you need in
Mm.
life. It's like, because I have done everything someone should do. Hopefully, I'm audible. Thank you very much. Just give me a thumbs up if I am decently audible. Now let's get started in today's run. We are going into Finance Tuesday. Today we'll be talking a lot about, sorry about that wrong day, but it is Finance Tuesday and it is time to get our market roundup moving. So let's take a look at our market analytics in terms of our general market view. We have seen that the Kwacha in the interim market seen that the kwacha in the market has moved up to about 18.0519. This is the interbank rate, the wholesale rate. So it is up 2.63% on the week. Against the dollar has gone up 2.63%, but the kwacha is still strong, 10.37% because of that dip down from the creditor negotiations. Remember, we only did one round of creditor negotiations. They still round two, which is the harder one with the private creditors, and we're not going to get re-rated. Now, remember last week I gave you a view that S&P has also given its outlook for the second half of the year, saying that it's expecting interest rates for anything that is B minus or below to be 34%. So already, even if we get re-rated, we're still on the lower side of the spectrum, where we are still going to attract very high interest rates. It's just that at default, no one wants to touch us. It's just that when they come in, they're still going to say, yeah, but we still want high interest rates. So don't expect interest rates to come down until the global rate environment starts to come down, but still expecting the exchange rate is sitting at about 18.0519, up 0.09% yesterday. Now, we're also seeing that technical indicators are starting to show that the dollar is on a buying streak. We did see yesterday that the all share index of the stock market was down 0.04% on a sell off on Zanaco shares yesterday, but we did see that shares are up, that stocks in general are up 0.07%. Actually, quarter two was actually quite a strong quarter. Though it was still weaker than the second quarter. Quarter two, we saw the stock market up 5%. So that's still a steady run. So year to date, we're still up 12.14% on the stock market. Bond interest rates and bond data has still not come in, but we're still going to be checking out what it's looking at year to date. If you're looking at also against the rand was up 0.47% yesterday, but still down 11.41% and down 11.25% in the last 30 days, mainly due to that huge dip down that we saw from the creditor negotiation deals, from the official creditor deal coming through. But you can see that as the dollar is picking up, the rand is still a bit flat because the rand is also facing a lot of battering from a strong dollar on expectations that the Federal Reserve is still expected to rise interest rates. Remember, there's still a strong dollar globally, that due to the strong labor market data, the Federal Reserve is still looking at becoming more aggressive with higher interest rates. Added to this, Vernon, we are seeing that GRZ bond index is up 13.82% year to date and up 13.61% year to 66% year to date in dollars, but it is coming down. If you're looking at the last week in dollars, it's down 2.49%. In Kwacha, it's up 0.48%. Interest rates still at 24.19. So we're still seeing highly elevated interest rates, way below the 34% that S&P Global is expecting for B negative or below rated instruments. Now, in terms of commodities, we did see that copper was up only slightly by 0.02%. There is news right now that we are facing, interestingly, in the world of copper, Vernon, that we are seeing that copper demand did come up on hopes of Chinese stimulus. But an interesting story to do with copper, actually, is that there is news that Tesla and a lot of the major electric vehicle companies are looking to reduce electric vehicle demand for copper per car. So currently they're looking at trying to become less copper reliant because currently every new electric car actually has 80 kgs. The actual number is 80 kgs of copper in the average new electric car. Works are being done to bring that down somewhere between 51 to 65 kgs. Now, remember, currently, a current combustion engine car only uses 20 kgs of copper. So you only find about 20 kgs of copper wiring inside a combustion engine car. Currently, you're looking at an electric car has 4 times more uh, 4 times more copper in it, and obviously they're trying to bring that down to about 2 to 3 times more, but still the electric vehicle industry is still going to ramp up demand for copper. So don't be too fraught with that. It doesn't mean that because they're trying to cut copper reliance, that means there's not going to be much copper in there. It just means that they're bringing it down by only about 20 kgs. That's the best, and they're investing heavily in innovations to do that. Now, that's mainly coming from the high-end users, of the high-end cars themselves. The low-end cars are still bulking up with a lot of copper. Now, we also see that oil moved down a little bit slightly yesterday, 0.99% from the day before, but it has started to pick up again. Expectations, obviously, are that that Chinese demand might pick up in the second half of the year, but there are still worries of a Federal Reserve rate hike. So copper and oil are still subject to a Federal Reserve rate hike, but there's also expectations that Chinese stimulus might allow for higher prices of oil to kick up onto the market. We did see gold also up 0.08% yesterday. Bitcoin up 1.1%, moving to one of its highest points, mainly because of the weak kwacha. Plus, Bitcoin prices have stayed above $30,000, mainly on the news of BlackRock trying to open a Bitcoin ETF. Everyone is waiting because Larry Fink talked about the democratization of Bitcoin. And we're also trying to get new mining data coming out of countries like Saudi Arabia. We're also seeing Ethereum up 1.4%, up to 33,941 kwacha per Ether coin. And in dollars, we're also seeing gold up 0.98%. So wealth insurance assets are still posturing positively. Remember that we may have gotten good news, but there is still a bit more work that needs to be done when it comes to the creditor negotiations. In terms of completing the private creditor negotiations. Remember that the end goal here is to get our private creditors to now change the terms and dates, because that's where our bad rating has actually come from in terms of our US dollar denominated bonds. It is about trying to get our private creditor situation sorted out going forward. So simultaneously, year to date, this is where we stand. Bonds are up 13.8%, stock market up 12.1%, USD down 0.2%. Still trying to climb out of the gutters there, while gold is up 5.6% year to date, and Bitcoin and Ethereum up 82.7 and 56.3. But I must warn you people again and again and again. I will continue to issue this warning because people don't like listening, Vernon. People don't like listening. You see how many people get scammed these days? They don't like listening. What I am constantly going to keep saying is USD, gold, Bitcoin, and Ether, though the rates of returns are higher, these are more unstable and highly volatile assets. So you must make sure you only use them as wealth insurance. Putting more than 15% of your wealth portfolio into these assets is dangerous. Okay, it is dangerous. But whether or not you want to listen to me, that's another story. I am just telling you, this is dangerous. There's an old song I'm not going to go into now. But 10% on 10th of July, our four horsemen do tell us Rwandan CPI yesterday did drop to 13.4%. While we got news, sorry, that was a bit of a mix-up there. Rwandan CPI dropped to 13.4%. Egyptian CPI rose to 35.7%, while in core inflation in Egypt, not Rwanda, core inflation in Egypt rose to 40%. So Egyptian inflation is still getting higher and higher and higher. Remember that Egypt has been suffering from food shortages and FX problems. While we're also seeing that investor sentiment in Europe has dropped again to 22.5, while US Treasury bills have actually gone up, have still been auctioning above 5%. UK retail sales up 4.2%. So we're getting mixed data still here, where inflation is generally coming down, except for idiosyncratic areas like Egypt. So, Vernon, let's get into our deep dives for the day. One of the interesting stories we saw yesterday is the Tobacco Free Association has actually pushed for the government to consider increasing taxes on tobacco products to reduce use and generate revenue. They're saying tobacco related health issues are causing expenditures up to 2.8 billion kwacha annually in health expenditures, which is equivalent to 1.2% of the GDP. So let's have a conversation about trying to tax people's behavior. Because I think that's where it can get very, very interesting. I think I'm of the view that yes, you can raise revenue from taxing tobacco. That you can do, but I don't see it stopping usage. I think what people don't understand is when people want to smoke, they don't care how much it costs. Okay, and one of the perfect examples I've seen in this, Vernon, is South Africa. They have put massive amounts of tax on their cigarettes in South Africa, massive amounts of tax. But still, in fact, last time I think when I was leaving South Africa, I remember it, I think about 70% of the price of a cigarette you were buying was the tax that was being put on it. Okay, you were paying more tax than actually to the company itself, but people still smoked more because cigarette usage is not a function of price; it's a function of culture and stress. Okay, that is what happens when people puff away, and it is one of those habits that people take on continuously. There's a way also they get around this industry, and I think my issue, I think they have to be very careful of, is if you push taxes up too high in the cigarette industry, you're going to encourage smuggling. I think that's where the danger comes in, and British American Tobacco results have constantly shown the biggest struggle they're having is cigarette smuggling. It's cigarette smuggling that comes through the border. Remember that you've got Zimbabwe next door, who has a thriving tobacco industry where people pack cheap cigarettes and then try and lob them over the border and get in. ZRA every week is capturing a truck with illicit cigarettes. So think about that's the trucks they're catching, Vernon. Now, what about the ones that are getting through? This country is getting flooded with that. So you have to be careful. On one hand, I understand where they're coming from, saying we can raise money, and you can. I remember there was one time Trevor Manuel, who was the then Minister of Finance in South Africa, said, we're going to take the cigarette sin tax and just channel it to education. So he said, well done to all you smokers. You are educating our children. Because he said, we've given up on the idea that higher taxes on cigarettes are going to result into lower usage because you people keep smoking. So the reality, I think, is that trying to think that by increasing the price, it's one of those products that's quite inelastic, and there's always some cheaper hustled alternative that will always come into the fold. And then secondly, Vernon, I think one of my other concerns is a lot of the tobacco sales or the cigarette sales often are done on the streets. So I'm wondering what tax capture can happen even there, because you're dealing with street dealers who can get their cigarettes from anywhere. So there's a lot of consumption that happens in the most impoverished parts of the country, and it's a lot of it is done at street level dealing. So it's again, can we enforce taxes, and will we just drive a lot of tobacco usage into the, for lack of a better word, Vernon, the black market of it? I wonder, what are your thoughts? What do you think? You think we should increase taxes on tobacco? Will it be effective?
Well,
Sorry, Vernon, can you
this
hear me?
reminds me of a time when Honorable Miles Samba, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me? You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying that I'm actually reminded of a time when we had one Miles Sampa at a particular time when he was pouncing on liquor stores with the city council at some point, and people never still really stopped drinking. They would open, and some would actually have closed doors, but would still, snap in, customers inside. Some would be told, use the back door. We are open, but just not in front. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just about the amount of money in this regard. It comes as a sense of trying to relieve what oneself from whatever they are going through, as some sort of excitement or relieving stress themselves. So when you talk about really increasing prices to that, it's the same as you saying we're going to increase the prices of a Rolls Royce. Still, people will buy. Why? Because when one buys a Rolls Royce, he's perceived to be doing well. They're perceived to be living a luxurious life, and they want to feel like they are living that life, and they want people to see them living that life. You know, even though it's fake and whatnot, but it gives them some sense of pleasure from doing that. So taxing, smoking or tobacco in itself, I'm not sure how effective that will be, but still people will buy. That's just the narrative. You know, they will complain here and there, but they will still buy. We have had fuel being increased, dropped, increased, and we still complain, but we still buy. So that one, I'm not sure if really it will work. It will stop people from smoking. Maybe may reduce, but it will not stop. No, people will still smoke and they will puff as much as they can actually, and just to and the funny part is that these are habits actually that have been inculcated so hard that it has even become an addiction. And I think yesterday there was a friend from another workplace, and he was telling me, today I have not smoked. I've rather taken a bottle of something. That's why I'm feeling like this, you know. So there's that dependency so much on it. For them to really stop, no. What it will only do is push them harder. They will not stop really. Increment will not result in stopping them. No, necessarily. I do not think so. No.
So I want to pose the question to our listeners. Send in a message, respond in the comment section. Do you think a tobacco tax increment will result in lower usage? Do you think a tobacco tax increment will result in lower usage? That's a question I think we should pose to the people. I mean, because that is what they were saying in their story, that to encourage lower usage. Revenue, yes. I think in fact, I think if the argument about generating more revenue was to be made, I'll say yes, definitely. But the only risk you're dealing with is the amount of smuggling you're going to be dealing with. That's the problem. I think you have ZRA enforcement costs will start to go up because they're really going to have to now just camp at the borders and just find people chucking cigarette boxes across the border from Zimbabwe. I'm telling you, it's going to be dangerous in this country. The amount of cigarettes you'll find. I think, when it comes to addictive substances, I think we sometimes don't understand what is the underlying issue. What is leading people to these massive levels? Is it our way of life? Is it a cultural activity? Or is it an economic situation? More often than not, you'll find that smokers will tell you this stress, my friend, it's always a high stress because that stuff is stress relief. They'll tell you that it's stress, and it's often accompanied also with alcohol consumption. So if you're looking at cigarette usage, a lot of it is next to alcohol consumption. Now, to be honest, Vernon, over the weekend I had a live session with a gentleman named Fit Muya Michelo. And we were talking, saying, if we're truly going to start talking about health related issues, then the one we should really be dealing with is actually sugar. Because he's actually saying, people, that's the real killer in this country. Okay, because the top stressors that we're seeing, sugar and salt. Okay, the top stressors in this country, in Zambia, the top stressors to our healthcare system, the fastest growing causes of death and disability in Zambia right now are actually obesity and high blood pressure. Those are the fastest growing. And then number three, sugar related. In fact, the top three are obesity, high blood pressure, and sugar related illnesses. So if we're going to talk about trying to curb the thing, then shouldn't we be talking to the sugar and salt distributors? Okay, to start saying, hey guys, because he actually said something interesting. He said, if you're going to put on a carton of cigarettes dangerous to your health, then why doesn't that sit on sugar and why doesn't that sit on salt? Because you've got even someone like Dr. Eliplias who has been saying, who's got a campaign called Fear Salt, because he's talking about how hypertension has become the silent killer. People, 60% hypertension deaths have risen in the last decade by 60%. Okay, hypertension has actually risen from, I think, number 15 killer to number 10 killer. And you're also finding the same thing with cirrhosis. You're finding the same thing with diabetes as well. These things are rising in their mortality rates. So sugar and salt, look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and curb tobacco. I'm not saying that. I think we should try and look at it, but I don't think taxes work. But I'm just saying, if you're going to start talking about taxing salt, then you got to start, taxing tobacco, you got to start looking at sugar. Sugar is a serious issue in terms of our usage of sugar in this country. Like I made the switch from sugar to honey, and people were telling me, well, it's also a sweet substance. Yeah, it's just less addictive. There's something in sugar, people. That stuff is addictive, bro. I'm telling you, like, I actually felt the shakes in my hand trying to get off that stuff. It's actually, I'm telling you, like, let me tell you something, Vernon. It is much easier. I don't know, people may not understand it. It's actually much easier to stop alcohol than it is to stop sugar. You know that? Like, it's actually easier to stop alcohol than it is to stop sugar. Like, alcohol is you can go on a hiatus. Sugar, hey, like, that's a serious one. But I'm just saying, if we're going to talk about health-related issues, and I understand that was the Tobacco Free Association, I'm just saying from a broader perspective, let's take a look at the fastest growing killers in society. And let's take a look at the fastest growing causes of death and disability. And I said it again, it is obesity. I know that that's a shock to everyone, that Zambia is becoming an obese nation. But yes, it's actually happening. Obesity is actually on the rise, and it's actually causing a rise in death and disability in this country. So obesity, high blood pressure, and sugar-related illnesses, those three are actually the highest causing, highest growth of death. But now, if you try and institute a sugar tax, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, when he was the mayor, he actually said he was trying to curb sugar consumption in New York. So he said he put a tax on all. He wanted to prohibit fast food restaurants from distributing drinks. Like, you know, an American could have unlimited refills in their fast food drinks. So distributing drinks, he tried to do that. He tried to say, okay, now you're prohibited from bottomless drinks because you're causing issues. He wanted to put a tax on all sugary products. And New York said, hey, chief, leave us alone. If we're going to die, leave us. So the people actually responded back. Because what most people don't know, like I know I've drifted into the sugar world, but what most people don't know is that you're only supposed to consume, as a man, Vernon. In fact, let me ask you a question, Vernon. Do you know what the maximum amount of sugar you're supposed to consume a day is? In grams, or in grams.
I don't think there's any sort of knowledge of how much sugar one's supposed to take out there. We just take because we want to. Do we have like a specification?
Yes, actually, the maximum amount of sugar a person is supposed to take per day, a grown man, is actually 36 grams. 36 grams of sugar for a grown man, which is 9 teaspoons. This is according to the American Heart Association, under the guidance of the United Nations as well, who have stated that it is the average. A man should not consume more than 9 teaspoons, not tablespoons, brothers, teaspoons. A woman should also not consume more than 6 teaspoons of sugar per day, 25 grams. You are not to consume more than that. Bruh, you know that some guys have done more than 9 teaspoons this morning. We're not even, you know that you've done more than 9 teaspoons just this morning alone. So already, now what they found was that the average American, for example, is consuming way more than that. Zambians, at least we're heading towards the limit. The average Zambian is now consuming 18 kgs of sugar per year. So just, and we're up from 11 kgs, by the way. The average Zambian is up from 11 kgs to 18 kgs of sugar per year in the last decade. Not the last 20 years, 30 years, the last 10 years. And it's mainly coming from the fact, Vernon, that we're consuming a lot more biscuits, snacks, soft drinks. There's a lot more sugar coming vicariously than directly. It's not just coming into your cup. And by the way, Vernon, when they're saying 9 teaspoons of sugar, they mean including in the biscuits you eat, in the bread you take, including in the soft drinks you have. They're also talking about that. Now, let me ask you a question. How many teaspoons of sugar do you think are in just a can of Coke? Or in a 500 ml of Coke?
Sorry?
How much sugar do you think is sitting in a 500 milliliter of Coke? I'm saying, take a guess.
It doesn't taste too sweet, but I would say ultimately 5.
5 teaspoons. That's your answer. Try 20.
Yeah,
Try,
I think 5.
So just one 500 milliliter of a carbonated beverage. You've already exceeded. So people are saying, yeah, but I don't put 9 teaspoons of sugar. Okay, so just one soft drink. You know that you've already exceeded the 9 teaspoons because they were already on about 20. We're already
One
almost at
carbonated
20.
drink.
One 500 milliliter carbonated drink already takes you to about 15 to 20 teaspoons of sugar. 15 to 20 teaspoons. so just in case
I
you
need to
think,
do my research on that. I need to understand more. But on the good
the
part,
average.
I've been more on the every time I have a meal, I try to couple it with a fruit and do a lot of vegetables.
So there is natural sugars and so forth, but yes, the average teaspoon of sugar that I was trying to tell you is about 3. It's somewhere about 4 grams. The average teaspoon of sugar is about 4 grams. So if you're already consuming a carbonated beverage, so think about how much growth there's been in the carbonated beverage industry in Zambia and how much more widespread carbonated beverage consumption has become. And then couple that with the obesity rise, couple that with the diabetes rise, and then also start looking at our salt consumption. And then you're going to start seeing that before we start taking on tobacco, perhaps maybe let's start looking at some of this other stuff. That's what we need to be careful of. But anyway, we're digressing. But the point is, if we're looking at the health budget of the country, let's also look at it very analytically. Now, let's also take a look at some of our other deep dives. I know that was a deep dive for everyone. ZRA has also called on citizens to actively participate in revenue mobilizations and efforts to help making the country economically independent. ZRA has said, look, we've made strides to improve our mobilization, but there are still low compliance levels. There are different initiatives such as including taxpayer registration, enhancing taxpayer education, and improved customer service is actually trying to be geared towards getting towards our 93 billion target. So now it's interesting because you can't fault ZRA on this one. They've started actively educating people. The registration has become easier. Like I've done registration even on a mobile phone. Like you can just actually do it on an actual mobile phone. So it's actually quite interesting. However, one of the issues, I remember Dr. Fundanga when Dr. Fundanga had released a paper. This was before he became the chair of ZRA. Now, this was when he was after Bank of Zambia, before ZRA. He was in the interim where he actually wrote a book about tax usage. And he brought up something that was very interesting. He said tax compliance is actually a factor of people's confidence that the money is going to get used properly. So that's the main issue. It's not really the tax rate, though that also does stimulate it. But he said tax compliance is a function of us seeing taxes used effectively. So the more confident the people are that their government will use taxes appropriately and effectively, the more likely people pay their taxes. So I understand where they're coming from, that look, we're trying to be economically independent, but it's a chicken and egg situation where the government has to show itself to utilize taxes efficiently and effectively before the people start trusting them more to say, let's pay our taxes to make sure that the government is running these services properly. However, on the other side of the spectrum, Zambians are busy saying, why are we going to the IMF, homegrown solutions, well, if you want homegrown solutions, you are going to have to make sure that we're also all tax compliant. So it's actually an interesting conversation. And will tax compliance also be brought up by simplification of taxes? That's another conversation that we need to start having as well. Other news that we saw in Africa is that we've seen Kenya end its 5-year slide in FDI, where it's now raised 107 billion shillings in FDI. It was still beaten out by Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, but it experienced a 63% jump in FDI, the second fastest amongst the major African countries after Egypt, the second fastest growing economy after Egypt, and this was the fastest expansion since 2017, when Kenya experienced 1.4 billion in net FDI when it rose 23%. Another news also that came in is the Zimbabwean dollar has strengthened against the United States dollar in the past few weeks as investors target the upcoming elections. So let's get into our topic of discussion for the day, Vernon, and that is life insurance. So I'm just going to quickly run through it as I've been going through an insurance conversation, and I want to quickly make one point clear when it comes to insurance, people. Let your insurance be insurance, and let your investments be investments. But wealth is built by a combination of insurance and investments. And I think everyone has to try and get along to that point. Wealth is built by a combination of insurance and investments. It's investments that build wealth. It's insurance that protects wealth. Okay, so that's what you need to also do. And what does insurance actually do? So what can insurance do? Insurance can create replacement income. There's some insurance products that can actually create replacement income. Insurance can pay off living income-based debt. So in other words, if you pass away and you've left a mortgage running, your loved ones can actually benefit from your insurance policy in that it can pay off debt. Or what can also happen, if anything, the bank that takes out an insurance policy against your debt, that's called credit life insurance. So you do find that some debt, if it's long-term enough, there is a portion called credit life insurance that's taken out that should anything happen to you, the bank gets an immediate repayment. That's why you find sometimes, let's say you've loaned about 20,000 or 50,000, you may find that you only get about 48,000 or 47,000 because that other 3 went into what's called credit life insurance purchase. So part of your loan is also making you repay back the insurance that you often find. People take a look at your loan terms and agreement terms. You often find that there's insurance factored into your loans as well. So be careful about anything like that. And also future needs like university. So often you find that education savings plans. This is why I've often told customers sometimes that if you don't have life insurance, make sure that your education savings plan, you've got 2. You've got one which you are building directly for growth, but then you've got one which you're contributing to for the purpose of insurance, because education policies also have life insurance attached to them. This is why one of the budget submissions that I made was to try and get education policies, to try and get people to invest more in education policies and education savings plans, also to get improved life insurance uptake. So this is what life insurance can do. But making people wealthy from the jump. I've seen a lot of people who listen to people online who say, yeah, man, just buy a life insurance policy and this and that. Those are insurance professionals who have gotten very rich selling insurance, who utilize it for that. But there's not many people who have built wealth through insurance, through life insurance policies. There are not many people. It is a horrible numbers game of people who have built wealth through insurance. It protects your plan. So if you have set a 20 to 30 year life plan, life insurance, which is the insurance that kicks in should you pass away and you are worried about your loved ones. Remember this, people. We define financial freedom as freedom from worrying about your needs, freedom from worrying about the well-being of your loved ones, freedom from the chaos ensuing in your life, and freedom to allocate your time as you see fit. So freedom from worrying about your loved ones is often captured in life insurance. People obtain life insurance policies because they're worried about the state they may leave their loved ones in. Perhaps they've got a running debt. Perhaps they haven't educated them as much. Perhaps they haven't reached a financial goal at the end. And they're worried that, okay, I've got this financial plan to build up wealth that I'd love to transfer to my children. And I haven't reached my target yet. I'm not on target yet. So perhaps a good life insurance policy will help bridge the gap. But life insurance is strictly about the state in which you want to leave your loved ones. Now, I know in Zambia, the fear of life insurance is that if people find out you have life insurance, they'll poison you. That is one of the biggest conversations I've seen. The biggest resistance points I've seen with people. But then again, that's often people also can't afford life insurance or think they can't afford life insurance, and that's just the excuse they use. But often people say, if somebody finds out I've got life insurance, they'll kill me. Because they're worried that there's that much love for money in this country, and maybe we've watched too many episodes of CSI where we think that is the case. People are not that good at killing each other. Now, the types of insurance are quite important, but basically you just really have to sit down with a finance consultant and not only with an insurance salesperson. And I know this may not always be great, but not always only, but try and get second opinions to make sure that you are getting the right insurance policy, because often people get very expensive ones. Now, you have got access, by the way, to retail life insurance policies. So please shop around. Life insurance is something you should spend your time shopping around at least three times, try and get about 3 quotations around just to make sure you're getting the right policy for yourself, because it is covering these things. Now, misconceptions are that the ultra wealthy use insurance to get rich. I'll be honest with you. The ultra wealthy use insurance to protect their wealth, but they don't use it to get wealthy. They use it when they've become wealthy. So the wealthier you get, the more you need to consider things like life insurance policies. Should you be considering where you want to get to or what you want to leave behind? And also, if you're going to have life insurance, you also need to start thinking about also your wills and estates, because you need to make sure that you've channeled that money correctly. And if you've put instructions towards how it's going to be used. Now, specific strategies that you need to employ to try and think about what kind of life insurance you get, should you now be at this point where you're thinking about life insurance, is what expenditure levels do you want to cover? What future expenditures or what debts are you holding that you'd like to cover? Look at the average, look at your asset portfolio now. What asset portfolio do you have now? Okay? Do you have an asset portfolio that is sufficient enough to already meet the targets and needs that you're looking for? That's something you should look at as well. What future obligations are you looking for? Are you looking for an insurance package that can cover your child's future education? Education is one of the biggest obligations. Or do you have a debt you have to repay back in 10 years' time, be it a mortgage or be it a loan of some sort, and you don't want to leave that in the hands of your children? You want to die and leave a will, not die and leave a bill. So you may want to take out life insurance for that. You're also looking at debts. Do you have debts outstanding to clear? Do you have a funeral package? If you don't have one, perhaps these are the policies that also help. If you're on NAPSA, by the way, and you pass away and you've made if you've made contributions in the last 36 months and you've passed a certain threshold, you also have a 12,000 kwacha funeral grant that is paid back to you from NAPSA. That's part of something you need to consider as well, but it's a refund. It's not paid before the funeral. You also want to look at life insurance takes a bit of time to pay out people. They're investigations. So you still do need things like a funeral package, or you need cash saved up. Do you have cover from your workplace? Does your workplace have a life insurance policy already for you? Before you go around shopping around for a life insurance policy, is it already a benefit from your workplace that you're not paying attention to? Do you have the current portfolio of assets that can manage this? Look at the age of your children. If you look at your insurance policies, keep revising them as your children get older and as your assets get bigger, because the risks that you need to cover are less and less and less. So keep revising these things. And insurance needs decline as life and wealth rise. That's a big thing you need to understand. Life insurance needs decline as you get older and as you get wealthier. the need for life insurance for you, it seems to diminish. So life insurance is something where I always advise people, do the math before you rush into it. Okay, do the math before you rush into it. But I'm going to leave you with the quote from Bo Henson from the Money Guy podcast, and he always says, "Let your investments be investments which build wealth. Let your insurance be insurance which protects your plans and protects your wealth." Okay, trying to get wealthy with what is supposed to protect your wealth is often a way to lose money or to make a mistake. There's nothing wrong with life insurance. It's actually quite important, but just use it for what it's meant for, not what you think it'll do for you, or whether you think it'll be some fast track to wealth for you. So just always read these things very carefully, get a second opinion, and get support in order to do this. I'm not sure whether we're going to have Vernon back, but I think we're at the end of the road to everyone. Please, we've seen some answers to our pulse question about, do you think a tobacco tax increment? We've got one answer here. The prohibition period of the 1930s that banned the sale of alcohol in America gave rise to smuggling, gangs, and organized syndicates. True. So we always have to remember. And Mick Chikwama has written, for alcohol, and consumers will always go for cheaper, unsafe substitutes, which are not going to be captured by taxes. Actually, it makes the situation worse for communities. So this is true to an extent. So that's why I'm saying smuggling will be an issue. So to everyone, we wish you all a wonderful day. We will catch you all tomorrow when we'll be capturing Wealth Wednesday. Have a blessed day.